Amida'scurse is a late 2021 ROM hack developed by OK Impala that recontextualizes the adventure of Link into a brand new world, with fresh sprites, different objectives, and more than a few quality of life adjustments. The entire journey is accompanied by a wholly original bent glass tube soundtrack that elevates the package beyond a simple reworking of assets into something truly remarkable. Zelda 2 has been an obsession of mine ever since it launched in North America back in December of 1998. When classes restarted after the holiday break in '89, an older kid on my elementary school bus would bring the box, cart, and instruction manual with him to exhibit to all of us like-minded nerds. Under his watchful eye, we'd pore over the details in the little booklet. The darker story, showcased with wonderfully drawn illustrations, a new Hyrule layout, and the 2D side-scrolling action screenshots displayed had me salivating, imagining how this visually different take on the burgeoning franchise would stack up to its original 8-bit Nintendo counterpart. The Legend of Zelda was one of my prized possessions on the console, so expectations were high, but I'd have to wait until this older school bus kid had grown a bit tired with his precious cart before he'd be up for a trade. This was a game that was always in high demand at the rental shops, so my best bet was to just wait it out. After a month or so, he agreed to swap carts for a weekend, one rectangular golden bit of plastic for another. Zelda 1 for the Adventure of Link, and yes, adventure, singular, not adventures, as many have annoyingly misnamed it over the years. I didn't waste one moment. From the second I arrived home from school that Friday afternoon, I absorbed myself into this thing and didn't stop until I defeated Link's shadowy self. This was the way I would eventually go on to consume all titles in the series, up to and including The Wind Waker. A new Zelda release was always an experience for me, and this was the entry that cemented my fascination with Hyrule and its recurring cast of characters. The original was equally as important, but it always felt like a one-and-done standalone product. Here, with this sequel, it was beginning to dawn on me that this was developing into a series. Beyond that, it was clear that Nintendo were willing to experiment with their properties, delivering something so different, yet equally as engaging. Zelda 2, Mario 2... Actually, the reason Mario 2 is so disparate over here is because it was actually a reskin of another game in Japan called Doki Doki Panic, which was actually developed to promote an event called Dream Factory 87. It's important to state this whenever Mario 2 is mentioned, as it is a little known fact that the actual Mario 2 is actually not all that dissimilar to Mario 1 and wasn't actually released in North America officially until Super Mario All-Stars dropped on the Super Nintendo. Super pertinent information to announce as much as possible to prove my supreme knowledge of all things video game related, all things Nintendo, all the time. In all ways, this will be the next Nintendo channel. Over the years, I've played a lot of Zelda 2 ROM hacks. They have become my go-to fan alterations of choice. I think it's safe to say that I've given all the noteworthy ones at least a shot, and this is the best of the bunch. Amida'scurse is a fun, fair, well-designed reworking of Link's adventure that won't easily be dethroned anytime soon as one of the best in this super niche sector of retro hobbyist gaming experiences. It's easy to pick up with a learning curve that works with the player rather than against. Many ROM hacks insist on running casuals through endless, unfair gauntlets. There's an audience for this sort of thing, but as I've stated many times on this channel, I prefer the ones that stick closer to something a regular human can tuck into and enjoy. This is arguably the most straightforward and digestible Zelda 2 has ever been. Skirmishes while traveling the overworld map have been eliminated entirely, which could be a sticking point for some hardcore veteran participants out there, but frankly, it speeds up the process and works well with the pacing of this particular reinvention. Instead, we are given more hidden tiles and areas to explore, many including power-ups, experience boosts, and other necessary items to accumulate. Some are even locked behind Metroid-style environmental gates that require a bit of backtracking to gather, though rarely are you expected to traverse long, arduous paths to return to these earlier regions, a testament to how well designed this world is from top to bottom. An item that allows water traversal is awarded early enough to make it easy for the player to skip forced encounters throughout Amida's many cave systems. It's more streamlined than the destructible boulder shortcuts of The Adventure of Link, making traversal a breeze if you're forced back to the beginning screen upon losing all lives. You'll start out with a few chances to reach the end, but little Link dolls now permanently increase your amount of tries, meaning if you find a few and perish, you will be sent back to the beginning with those extra lives in stock. It's also possible to save anywhere by simultaneously pushing up and A on the menu screen, though doing so will drain all of the unused experience accumulated up to that point. Still, it's a good tool to quickly bounce out, and should be a great asset for speedrunners. There are more towns and dungeons. Some items have been brought over from Zelda 1, such as the Holy Book of Nintendo Secrets and butter-baked Parisian croissant rolls. Bombs replace the hammer late in the game. Rupees are the new pea bags, a variety of new spells. I won't be spoiling anything as things get quite interesting in the final stretch with sad Link doppelganger encounters and some fresh, new environmental changes. Townsfolk speak in clear English as they cough up legitimately helpful clues. The text appears quicker, and I like the addition of little icons within their dialogue boxes. Unnecessary, but a nice graphical touch. All of these safe havens have been renamed, and most are redesigned to aesthetically gel with their placement on the overworld map, which itself is filled with animated tiles. A particularly helpful spell returns from the base game, but it's now cleverly tucked away in an optional, decrepit, demon-infested village, chock full of lore implications. It's off the beaten path and well worth the trip. Amida'scurse favors exploration over combat, making it feel more like an unofficial successor to Link's first overhead journey through the land of Hyrule. A lot of the baddies have been given makeovers. I particularly like the new Octorok design, and even the lowliest of peons now drop experience points. Skull blobs no longer take 4,978 hits to take down, which is a fine trade-off as they still deplete a hefty amount of magic if they collide with our stalwart warrior. Each temple has a distinct theme. New background assets, color schemes, and puzzles are introduced to make them feel truly unique. Some are more combat focused, while others force the player through complex, well-designed mazes. OK Impala subverts expectations frequently in these ghoul-infested dungeons with plenty of hidden paths and surprising boss encounters. One of these big bads guards an entrance, for example, while another reveals itself after an item has been acquired, which is a clever twist that clearly took a bit of talent to accomplish with the game's infamously stubborn code. These reworked labyrinths are the highlights, filled to the brim with surprising secrets. They're laid out as expertly as a good Metroid area with a nice flow that never feels imposing or tiring. Whenever I got stuck, there was always an environmental hint to lead the way, such as a visible area off the beaten path or a clear, natural progress halting obstacle that I'd need to tackle later with a new item or spell. Placing a crystal to progress no longer tops Link up to reach his next level. Instead, these monoliths now spew a set amount of XP, making them feel less restrictive. Upgrades and items have been shuffled. The upward thrust, for example, is introduced much earlier in the adventure, which makes it a lot more useful with a hearty amount of aerial enemies and breakable blocks thoughtfully placed throughout side-scrolling sequences to take advantage of the skill. It's now possible to jump out of the fairy spell, and traversal through doors is no longer an exploit in this dainty, diminutive form. Spells stick. In other words, you'll no longer need to revisit the menus to remind Link every time you want him to cast one. It's a bit hard to explain, but Zelda 2 fans will know exactly what I mean. The point is, it all feels more streamlined and user-friendly. That's my overall take of Amida'scurse. It's streamlined and friendly. Health replenishing fairies are more generously placed. When an area requires a ton of spells to be cast, a red magic bottle is always within reach, and the enemies are all thoughtfully, deliberately doled out reasonably. This is still a challenging game, but its fun-fair approach is definitely a treat. Heart pieces and other permanent upgrades are secretly tucked away in logical places. Traversing along rivers and waterways cuts down on repetitive backtracking. Overall, I don't have anything bad to say about this thing. There are tiny details everywhere, such as this little boy standing next to a pair of tombstones, suggesting the death of his parents or caretakers. This run-down village where items can be gathered out of abandoned homes. Ultimately, this is a thoughtful, passionate take on a very special game. It's not necessarily better than The Adventure of Link, but it definitely dares to be different, as much its own thing as possible, considering the restrictive nature of that game's code. Bent Glass Tube's original soundtrack is a lot more somber, perfectly complementing this Majora's Mask-style narrative where our hero has been trapped in this strange world. Ahh Mee Duh feels like a living, breathing place, thanks to all of the thought that clearly went into its design. Check it out. Next time on this channel, another Zelda fan game. You've spoken, and I've listened. Nintendo is all that matters. We love Nintendo. We you, we everyone.
I can't feel you!